welcome back. We made it. What are we up to? Season 2, Episode 2. Today we're going to talk about the Snake Eyes GT. I'm Sam Morgan and I'm coming at you live from Gur Community College. It's been a minute since the last episode because I have been diligently chipping away, working at terrain for an Age of Sigmar event that I'm going to be running in Melbourne this coming weekend. So I got some feedback after the last episode. Perhaps I hadn't been too good at contextualizing previously. I hadn't given enough context. So there's two ways that you can sort of respond to feedback. You can take it on board and grow as a person, or you can be a petulant child and mock the feedback. So let's see how grown up I am.
You'd better tell the captain. We've got to land as soon as we can. This woman has to be gotten to a hospital.
A hospital? What is it?
It's a big building with patients, but that's not important right now.
Snake Eyes, what is it? Well, it's a 64-player Age of Sigmar event. It's being held in Melbourne, and it's running this weekend, the 20th and 21st of August, 2022. It's the first event that I've run solo, so without the assistance of the Dwellers Below crew. Probably more accurately, previously I was a support person rather than a lead. I've run a heap of one-dayers, and obviously I've attended quite a few tournaments, but oh boy, is there a lot of work you need to do in order to set up for a tournament, and am I absolutely a couple of days out feeling the pinch in terms of the terrain and the boards and that sort of stuff, and the mad scramble to the end. I've had the joy this week of working with the council whom we're renting the space from, and there were some issues with the public liability insurance that I had, so trying to resolve that in the 11th hour has been hectic, but hopefully come Saturday morning, it's all smooth sailing for the players. It's like a duck, above water. I want everything to look chilled and relaxed, and then there's some mad paddling going on below the surface. I'm going to do a list review show today, but it won't be a list review show in the traditional sense where you hear 64 times that the bloke's a lad, that the list is elite, and that they'll be taking those top tables by storm, for three reasons. Those are really boring, they're typically really terrible, and I don't want to. So let's talk about destruction. We've got 64 players, 5 of them are destruction players, and interestingly enough, 3 of the 5 hail from Measured Gaming. So the destruction players represent about 8%, and I think of the Measured players attending this weekend, probably it's about 33% are running destruction. So the representation of destruction obviously is pretty significant up Bendigo way. We don't have any duplicates with only 5 players. Everyone's taking a unique faction. Noting that I've sort of split up the Auroch war clans, so that we've got a Bone Splitters, an Iron Jaws, a Big War. What else have we got? Oh, maybe we do have a duplicate, who knows. And then we don't have any Gloomspite at all. We don't have any Purple Suns. The destruction players are, a discerning bunch, and they haven't sullied themselves by running the Purple Suns. We got 4 Incarnate, and I sort of feel like the Incarnate's in theme for the destruction players anyway, so we're not going to judge them on that. I wanted to quickly talk about my favourite destruction list at the event, or the best destruction list at the event, rather. I think this is exactly the sort of Big War list that I've been playing, and this is being run by Dalton. So he's got the Maw Crusher, who's a mage and can do the Great Big Hand of Gort to teleport you around, and obviously later in the list he's got the Breaker Boss on Maya Brute. So the combo there is that you teleport the Breaker Boss, and then you can use his mount trait Fasten to move, and then he's got a short charge to make, or alternately you can charge things like the Gore Grunters, and and then sit them outside of 12, make their Iron Jaws move, and give them a 3-inch charge. Same deal with the Mega Boss. I mean, lots and lots of utility there. Unfortunately, the sequencing is that the spell happens after your Wurrgog Prophet decides if he's going to stare or not, because it's a starter phase thing, but nonetheless you can set up for later turns. So he's got the Prophet with the 4+ ward, he's got the Shaman to buff the Breaker Boss or to buff the Bolt Boys. I certainly wouldn't sleep on the combination of buffing the Breaker Boss with the +1 save and then subsequently buffing him with a Mystic Shield either. You can create a bit of a tanky piece there, so long as your opponent doesn't have mortals. And then he's just got on the minimum battle line, the Bolt Boys for a bit of a range threat, and the 2 units of Gore Grunters. And the Big War obviously gives you cumulative buffs over the course of the game. The War as the grand strategy is great. It's like get the general or a battle line unit in the opponent's territory. And as I said, he's got the teleport on the general and he's got a movement outside of the movement phase. So long as he's able to either keep the Maw Crusher or the Arb Boys alive, he should be able to complete that relatively easily. And then he's got the, kill the last battle line is the Iron Jaws generic battle tactic, and then the get 30 war points is the other one. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways that this list can score, and there's a lot of ways that this list can punch you in the face. And with the combination of the Bolt Boys, the Wurrgog's War Scroll spell, and then his ability to stare things down, he's actually got a solid range threat as well. Now, this is the coolest one. This list, we're running a few little side challenges at the event, and one of them is the best super awesome best friends club, which is where you have a minimum of 3 named characters. Now, these aren't named characters in the sense that they are unique, that they're special characters. These ones are part of the Sons of Behemoth, but the player's gone through and named them all. So this is from Jonathan, and he's gone with the extra damage on the Man Crushers in the Stomper tribe, and he's got the 40 wound general who's got reroll save. So it's like, I hate Sons of Behemoth, but this is a cool list, and I particularly enjoy the fact that he's named everything in it. I like that additional level of commitment to the bit. You're playing the worst army in the game, but at least you've done something right in terms of those unique names. And I wish Jonathan play a few times on TTS. We've been in a couple of tournaments. We've both participated there, and it looks like he knows what he's doing with the army. I think he's got a lot of reps in with the what are they called? Sons of Behemoth. So I'd expect him to do reasonably well with this list, despite the fact that it's not necessarily a meta breaker. All right, Death, 16 players. So we're working, ascending towards the highest volume of players. I'm sure you won't be able to guess who takes out the greatest total there. And the most popular list was Soulblight, which was relatively surprising to me. I've been playing quite a bit of Soulblight myself under this GHB, and I love them. I think they're really excellent. The combination of zombies as a tar pit, and then output and the stacking of buffs and debuffs just makes them a really interesting piece in the current meta. And across the Death Grand Alliance, we've got representation of all the factions. We've got some OBR in there, got some Flesh Eater Courts. Shout out to Lockie Mulcahy, who's making his illustrious return to Age of Sigmar. So great guy, great list, top tables. They've got 7 Purple Suns, which isn't that surprising when you think about the innate casting bonuses that are available to them. So, for instance, the Soulblight lists will be able to get +2 to cast through having the arcane ability on their little vamps. So like Legion of Blood is quite popular, and then Viacos obviously reroll to cast, and getting casting bonuses from Belladama, and there's just a heap of things in there that make that an enticing choice. And then the other thing with the Purple Sun is that you don't particularly care about Purple Sun if you're running MSU Nighthaunt, so you're immune to the rend, and you don't mind if you lose a model here or there, and obviously you've got ways of bringing models back as well. So Purple Sun is a bit of a no-brainer in that build, and obviously access to casting buffs through Reichnor and others. So yeah, look, just the one incarnate for Death, and I'm going to be honest, I was shocked when I looked at the death lists, who came out as having the strongest list, and arguably I think one of the strongest lists at the event. But before I talk about that list, I just remembered I've got a death joke. All right. So some of you guys will know that I've been focusing on my physical health, been getting out there, and I've been doing the weights, and I've started running. And on my morning run, I run past the Kew Cemetery just round the corner here. Beautiful old cemetery, and I was running the other morning bright and early, and I saw this bloke, and he was squatted over a grave, and he looked deep in contemplation. And as I'm prone to doing as I go for a run, I shout out to him, "G'day, mate, morning." And he surprisingly looked up at me and he goes, "Nah, I'm just taking a shit." All right, best in show, Death Row. I cannot believe it, Anthony Rowe. What's happened to you, man? You used to be like the guy that would run all the intro games at our club, down to earth, lovely. Now this is just a full-on filth fest. So he's gone the Guardian of Souls, the reroll the cast. He's gone the Cruciator, who just is an awesome debuff piece at the moment. The Spirit Torment and Reichner. So that combination of characters as a starting point, chef's kiss. That to me represents significant value without over-investing points, because you're holding on to those points so you can then go on to buy all these bodies. 20 Blade Guys, 10 Blade Guys, 10 Blade Guys, 5 Hex Wraiths who have incredible utility, 10 Harridans, 10 Harridans, 4 Banshees. I'm so upset people took Banshees, because it means I'm going to need to make some rulings over the weekend. Then he's gone the Cogs, obviously with the Nighthorn army having access to a table of buffs based on their charge range. Cogs is an incredible piece for that list, and equally it's helpful if you're wanting to get those cast rerolls up, because you might want to cast, for instance, Purple Sun at +3 to cast, and having a reroll, it's all about redundancy, and that's what I love about this list from Anthony. He's got sufficient redundancy, even things like taking the combination of Bloodthirsty and Cogs, like that's a class choice, and I'm very much expecting him to finish in the mid tables, but this list should be a top one prospect. And I think, like, with all respect to Anthony the World, I love the bloke. If we swap the player out and we gave this to someone like Matt Tyrrell, or Ronya even, like if we gave this to one of our Nighthaunt aficionados, then I reckon this is a list that's capable of winning events. All right, coolest army. My man, Chris Seavey. So Chris and I are able to play games during the week up until recently. So I've run into his Soulblight Gravelords quite a bit, but regrettably he's just picked up a 9 to 5. So I'm very hopeful that he tires of that and he's able to play Warhammer during the day and goes back to doing shift work. So Chris is running. The thing that I love about this is the yin and the yang, the buff and the debuff. So he's got the zombie dragon. He's gone with the martial discipline and the soulbound garment. So this guy's up to a 2-up save base, and he's getting an extra attack on his lance. And then his lance, obviously, on the charge, his lance is doing crazy damage. He hasn't got a spell written down there, but I would assume that he's got the flaming weapon on that guy. He's then got Manfred, who's just an amazing buff piece. With Decrepify, so he's a buff and debuff piece. He's got the big bubble, and there's 2 significant combat threats in the dragon and the Graveguard, and those guys really benefit from Manfred's command ability, and the fact that Manfred's command ability happens in the hero phase is really significant as well, because it means that it's it's always going to be up. So the Vampire Lord, he's the guy with the +2 to cast that I mentioned earlier. And that comes into play with both Purple Sun and the Burning Head's nice for a cheeky mortal wound here and there. And Torgilius is just your cheap and cheerful debuff character, tough to kill. Manfred's tough to kill. The Zombie Dragon's tough to kill. And then Torgilius, obviously 6 wounds and a 4-up ward. And access to multiple debuff spells, super useful. And then, he's gone the zombies. The Vargheists are an interesting pick as well. I ran a mirror match against Chris recently where I popped some Vargheists up and just harassed the flank, and that they were super useful in the mirror. And given that there's 7 Soulblight players, I think that they might be a clever pick. Actually, I'll talk about that game quickly. I took Drog, and Drog ate like 1,500 points worth of his army, which is beautiful. The justice was swift, though, because the next game that I played with Drog, I played against the Stormcast special character who draws down lightning, and he rolls a dice for every wound you have. So he's rolling 35 dice for 4-ups mortal wounds. And like across 2 hero phases, he basically killed Drog before I got to do anything. I love Death at the moment. I've got a massive Nighthaunt army, got a big Soul Blight army. I'm really interested to see how these guys go. Chaos. All right. 17 players for Chaos. They represent 26% of the field. The most popular is Skaven, and amongst the Skaven lists, you're going to see some really sort of interesting all-rounder builds. So we've got Alex Rowe, who's running like I would say probably the best all-rounder build of the Skaven. And then we've got Carlos, who's changed his slightly so that he's got the sensor bearers in there. And then, yeah, some of the other Skaven, I think like Wayne Buck, for instance, I reckon is a good chance at top 5ing or podium. And then, yeah, Josh Clark running the name characters with the Warp Lightning Vortex and the Purple Sun. So the Skaven guys, I think, are in a good position to do quite well in this tournament. There's one where there's a double 15 block of sensors as well. That I'm super keen to see how that plays. But yeah, look, I think Skaven is just in a really good spot. The Beasts of Chaos are hilarious because we've got 2 Beast players, like one's running double Gorgon and the other's running 4 Chimeras, and then we've got the list that I'll talk about now, which is my mate Nathan Goodchild. He's come back with a flurry, and he's just picked up a 4 and 1 up in Queensland last weekend, and then he's down here in Victoria, running a very, very optimized Beasts of Chaos list. So what's he got? He's got the Shaggoth, the Shaman, and then the Zangor Shaman. So that's a pretty standard sort of kit out. I think some people like to take two Dragon Ogre Shaggoths for a bit of redundancy. Then the Dragon Ogres, they've built this really excellent balance between offense and defense, between the wound and save volume, the improved rally, and then obviously the progressively improving rend. And then the Zangor Enlightened on disc are one of the best units in the game in Beasts of Chaos, and the capacity to summon those really easily when you've got a monster and you're able to rack up those points for the summoning. And then obviously he's got the Kronspine, the Incarnate, there as well. So I think that the combination of the raw number of wounds he starts the game with, his capacity to summon and threaten objectives, and the raw damage output, those 3 things combined, added to the fact that he's a relatively low drop count as well. I think he's a 4 drop, and those things sort of combine, and the fact that I think Beasts of Chaos are still, despite being a very old book, an unknown quantity. So they get quite a lot of airtime on the top tables, but I don't reckon people have had an opportunity to really dissect how they work and to come up with some plans. And I know in terms of our approach to Worlds this year, we unfortunately didn't take Beasts, and we're all going through and marking them as a red matchup. The more we practice into them, the more we realise, wow, this book is absolutely cooked now. And good on them. They deserve a minute at the top, you know what I mean? All right, this next list, the coolest army in Chaos, is another one where he's up for the super awesome best friends club. He's got the 3 named characters, Selesky, Sinessa, and Sigvald, and they're supported by 2 units of Blissbarb Archers, which are a low-key excellent unit now. And then the Soul Twins are actually really interesting in Bounty Hunters. Their capacity to throw out the hurt, particularly on GVs, is something not to be underestimated. And Jared's the number 1 Slaanesh player in Australia. arguably the number one Slaanesh player in the world, arguably the number one Slaanesh player in the universe. So I'm super excited to watch him pilot this and see how he goes. And despite the low number of bodies that you see in this list, I would anticipate at some point over the weekend he is going to have an absolute heap of demonettes floating about on those tables. So this is a really pretty army as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the final product looks like. Sinessa's got a heap of sneaky tech, but just being a one caster is awful. It should be like, if you are a lore master, you have a minimum of 3 casts or something. Like, it's just, knowing all the spells and having to be quite selective about how to use them is frustrating. But I'm super excited to see how this plays, and I'm keen to hear what Sigvald's damage output is over the weekend, because he's a guy that can really swing a game on one nice charge roll. Order. I don't really like Order. I was thinking about it. It's like 26 players out of 41. That feels like an over-representation. To me, that is probably demonstrative of Games Workshop giving Order too much love, and conversely, the Destruction being so underrepresented is a representation of their bizarre, perverse, obsessive hatred of Destruction. So 26 players. Sylvaneth's the most prevalent. If you have not played against Sylvaneth yet, I would strongly recommend jumping on wahapedia.com and having a look through, because they are an absolute minefield of rules. I played my mate Hayden, the Kotio, a couple of weeks ago, and every phase is like, oh yeah, I get to do X, but I also get to do Y. Oh, and I forgot Z. And it's just like, we were testing lists, and I absolutely smashed him. But that wasn't the point. The point was his army was like fatiguing for me mentally, and I wasn't even playing it. So definitely would recommend having a look at the Sylvaneth special rules and the book before the event. I think in the hands of an experienced pilot, Sylvaneth are a contender for top 3 or 4 armies in the game. And I think as you are learning the book, or as you are learning the game, Sylvaneth is probably one of the worst armies in the game. So they're going to occupy a really strange space when it comes to analysis based on results. Because they're an army which, if you can flex, then you're going to do incredibly well. And if you make mistakes in terms of your micromanagement, where stuff is and the sequencing of things, then you're just going to lose, and you're going to lose bad. So I think they're a players' army, and I'm excited to see what they turn into over the next sort of 4 months or whatever we've got left in this particular GHB season. Order players like Crutch City, 7 Purple Suns, 4 Incarnates, and there's a fair few Purple Sun Incarnate combos, if I recall correctly. And I think Order will obviously, with the prevalence of good players and good lists, will end up right up the top of the standings of this event. So best in show here is Lockie's... Oh, what have I done here? I've somehow managed to copy the wrong list. Well, that's a bit frustrating, isn't it? I've given you Nathan's list again. All right, let's see if I can do Lockie's list based on my mind alone. Lockie is running Seraphon. He's running Fangs of Sotek. He thinks it's AOS 2 still. He's got Salamanders. He's got an Incarnate. He has an Engine of the Gods who's a wizard, and an Astrolith Bearer. So what he can do is he can rack up the summoning points through the Slann, choosing to cast 1 fewer spell, the Astrolith keeping the Slann alive, and then he's able to bring on a range of units depending on the need in the particular game, and the summoning points, frankly, are too cheap. So he's going to have access there to the ability to bring units on, and that's very useful in that army, because it means that you can use your skink screens in a way that is prohibitive for your opponent, so blocking their movement, holding objectives so that they need to deploy resources away from where your threat pieces are, and then he's got Salamanders that are obviously incredible, and then he's got the buffs that you're able to obtain from the skinks, and he can summon through the engine as well. There's just a whole host of reasons that is an incredibly strong book, and he's an excellent pilot on the Seraphon. And I would anticipate that he will win the event. I have no idea how I must have done a copy and paste. Anyway, good luck to Lockie. Oh, this worked! Yeah, look at this, it's amazing! Coolest army, Order. This army is one that I have written myself previously. The only difference between this build and the one that I wrote is I went double artifact instead of triple prayer, so double prayer, double artifact, and I also took the +2 to run and charge battle mage, because I think that is a nice force multiplier when you're needing like a block of 30 witch elves to hustle across the board. So what we've got here, and this is Michael Thompson, so what we've got is the Drakey Ganeth, and the Drakey Ganeth gives you two things. It gives you additional rend on the charge for your battle line girls, and it gives you additional reinforced units, which I wish it was a mechanic they'd play around with more. There are some armies that just suffer from not having access to the appropriate number of reinforcement points, and I think the game would be in a far better place if we just address this holistically. And made that a change, because I think it's one of the few things that from second to third that I strongly dislike. So he's gone the extra bodies. He's got 30, 30, 20 witch elves. They are an absolute blender. You get some easy battle tactics with the witch elves and the heart renders. He's got double high glad for a bit of redundancy there, and then obviously between Mind Razor, the high glad, and the Drakey Ganeth, he's able to stack that rend right up, and then yeah, it's just a question. It asks the question: can you survive the punch of this army? And if he plays in waves, if you're unable to drop a unit of witch elves, it makes it incredibly difficult for you to wrestle ascendancy from him, because the way that the witch elves work is you can set them up in lines, and you sort of have this wave model going on, and the front line will kill what it fights, and then you'll go and throw a punch back at them, and if they survive that, they'll then kill what you've thrown at them, and then he's still got 60 sitting behind, or then he's still got 50 sitting behind. And the ones with the bladed bucklers, you can whack Martyr Sacrifice on them, and they're popping 6s to save are going to be mortal wounds back to you. Then when they die on a 5-up, they're going to do another mortal wound, so they can actually end up being an excellent trading unit, just in terms of that. And then the bladed bucklers change your save characteristic now, so you stack that with a cheeky mystic shield and the cauldron of blood save, and all of a sudden they become quite difficult to move. So yeah, I love this list. This is what my Amazon army is going to be at some point in time. It's just every time I go to glue a weapon on an Amazon, I literally need to pin the hand, pin the arm, hold it with clamps. It's like this obsession with Middle Hammer is probably going to wreck my lungs with the amount of metal that I'm ingesting, white metal, and it's certainly going to break my sanity at some point.
There's been a little problem in the cockpit.
The cockpit? What is it?
It's the little room in the front of the plane where the pilots sit. That's not important right now.
All right, that's it. Pretty low-key list show. I'm supposed to have said 64 times, oh, I love it. Oh, what a list. Oh, what a bloke. Shout out to Saminda, because we've got one lady attending as well, and she's got an awesome Stormcast army. So I'm pretty sure it was a 1-drop with Big Krondus from memory, and then she's got the Praetors in there to protect him, and some buffing characters. So there's a couple of instances of that list, actually. Nick from Craftsman Wargaming, he's running that as well, because like myself, he's horrendous at time management, and left painting his Iron Jaws to the last minute. So the Iron Jaws have been shelved, I believe, until after this event. So I did want to give some shout outs. Literally so many people have been helping me. I'm still fucked. I've still got so much not sleeping and terrain building and painting to do. I might reach out to some of the Geelong boys, actually. But yeah, I wanted to thank Hayden. He's the co-TO of this event. He's been helping in the background, building and painting terrain. He's been helping with rules questions as they come through from people, administering the tabletop TO as well, doing all that stuff. It's many hands make light work, and I think from this experience, what I would say is next time you probably need a support team rather than just a support person, but he's been awesome and has jumped at everything I've thrown at him. Craftsman Wargaming, I mentioned Nick. He's provided some spot prizes for us that are fantastic, and he's cut a whole heap of bases for the terrain, so all of our terrain has a clear area effect. Gap Games have been phenomenal and sent down a couple of army boxes, and we got some online gift vouchers for them. Artis Opus have sent over the new paint brushes. Those are currently with custom, so we'll hold our breath and see if they make it on time. And if they don't, I'm just going to do a random number generator of the 64 players we've got signed up and give them the Artis Opus brushes the day they arrive. Mithras Games are phenomenal. These guys make the best mats. They are cheap. They are durable. They are pretty. And the customer service is just ridiculous. Like, the responsiveness is so good. I cannot speak highly enough of Mithras Games. I'm now up to, I think, 20 Mithras mats, and I love them. Big love to them. Massive shout out to them. And then General Games, which is my local. I play at Melbourne during the week whenever people are free. Not everyone is a man of leisure like myself, but yeah, I play at Melbourne all the time. Love those guys. Greg's been phenomenal. We've got a heap of spot prizes from them, and we've got some gift vouchers as well. And it's the culmination of all these people's help and support that makes the event possible. This one will still run at a loss, like 100% will run at a loss. But that doesn't matter. It's about building infrastructure and having the stuff in place so that we can run more events in Melbourne and the surrounding suburbs moving forward. Historically, we have only really run one-dayers, and we've only really maxed out at about 20 players, and that's entirely to do with infrastructure, not to do with desire. So having the boards now that clubs can use, having the mats, having the terrain, that cache just means that we're going to be able to run some really awesome events in the future. And the practice that we've got setting this one up has been like instrumental. I've made 50 mistakes at least. I might even do just a short video about like 10 things I'd do differently if I was running this tournament again, because the learnings are just, yeah, as soon as you try something new, you learn how little you know. So, yeah, really looking forward to the event. Hope all the players have a great time. And then more than anything, I'm looking forward to putting my feet up next week.